30 seconds. Is everyone ready? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Lynn Haven Community Redevelopment Agency for April 26th. Before I ask for approval of the meeting minutes, at this time I would like to ask for a motion to excuse Commissioner Shad from the meeting. He has a family medical emergency.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Schubert, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so that motion is carried and Commissioner Shad is excused. I would also like to ask for a motion on item 2 for the approval of the meeting minutes from March the 22nd, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board or questions? Any discussion or questions from the public? Thank you. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the meeting minutes from March 22nd are approved. Item number 3, the discussion and possible action regarding the residential incentive program application for 313 Alabama Avenue. Is there any report or discussion from staff regarding this property? Are there any questions or concerns from the board? Is there a motion that we approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Sorry.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions from the public regarding this property at 313 Alabama Avenue? There appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll for item number 3?
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. That is approved for 313 Alabama Avenue. Item number 4 is a similar item, discussion and possible action regarding the residential incentive program application at 311 Virginia Avenue. Any discussion or questions from the board or any report from staff? There appears to be none. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval. Second.
And there's a second. Is there any discussion from the public? Questions? There appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll for item number 4?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so that will be approved. Moving to item number 5, CRA resolution number 2016-04-01 concerning the Lynn Haven CRA Advisory Board. Do we have a report from staff regarding this resolution?
Yes, Mr. Jenke's here.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, if you recall, is a follow-up item from a previous CRA board meeting. The board asked me to go back and draft a resolution with the city attorney to formally form a CRA advisory board. The proposed resolution is attached to the agenda packet, and staff is requesting approval as presented.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion regarding this resolution from the board?
Mayor has, or actually the city attorney, have you not had an opportunity to review and form?
Yes, I have. Yes, I worked with Ben on it, and we drafted it together.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions from the public? Do I have a motion that we accept this resolution?
I move approval that we accept Resolution 2016-04-01.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and that motion is approved. And I do have one comment or question. Now that this resolution has been passed, will we be moving in some expedient fashion to have those applications on the website so that people may apply for these positions? Just a question.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we can use the form that we already have for an advisory boards committee, and just if somebody expresses an interest to serve on the CRA advisory board, we can just make a little note on it and just take it from there.
So I guess my question is if we could expediently go ahead and put this up on the city website so that people know that
Yes.
you can apply now. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay. Item number 6, CRA Resolution number 2016-04-02, the Highway 390 Commercial Incentive Program. Is there a motion for acceptance of this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there questions or comments from the board or report from staff? No, we're good. Are there any questions from the public regarding this? Mr. Walker?
Good afternoon. Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I just have one question that's been bugging me for a while here as this thing unfolds on the 20-year saga of this road widening. The incentive program seems to be a nice little Band-Aid to help. My question is this. Have we done a detailed study on the businesses that are going to be displaced, removed, shut down, how many there are, location, and what is the tax revenue loss to the city of Lynn Haven, Bay County, over this? I did enter into discussion with EDA on this, and of course they take a Pontius Pilate attitude of it and care less. They don't recognize anything with a loss of more than 10 employees. But if I look at this correctly, we've got possibly 30 some odd businesses that are going to be lost. And if each business had one person, that's 30. So I think EDA should take a look at it. They won't. But my concern is tax revenue lost to the city because the state or somebody has decided to widen this road 20 years ago. Hasn't come about. What are we going to lose? And how are we going to replace it with this little $5,000 incentive program? I guess my question is this: have we made a detailed study as to how much is going to be lost, how much tax revenue is going to be lost, and is there any way that we could ask EDA to maybe help us out?
I think those are all great points, and I think there are some yeses to some of your questions because I remember sitting here, Mr. Janke has done several reports and studies about how many businesses would be displaced and how much tax revenue we're going to lose, and I agree with you that it would be nice to have that assistance from EDA. As far as the $5,000, while $5,000 per business is certainly not, a mitigation for losing one's business on 390, it would hopefully be at least a nice invitation from Lynn Haven for, that we really do care. We would like for you to stay. We hope that we can help you to relocate. So I think I personally think it's a wonderful, a gesture really, because, when you talk about moving to a new building, you're looking more in 50,000 or 500,000, but 5,000 is at least, we'd love for you to stay. Please do, is how I read it. Does anybody else have a comment? Or Ben has comments, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe as an add-on, I did reach out to about 25 businesses that are affected by the widening, so one of the answers to your question is 25 businesses. And the majority of the business owners are just impressed that the city is even taking the efforts to reach out to them and to basically show them that we care. We are sitting in this together, and we can't pay for all of it, but we want to help. So just this move from the city is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions regarding this? Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ashbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so the resolution has passed. Item number 7 is PMG presentation regarding the Lynn Haven CRA plan update. Mr. Schubert, would you like to comment on this and introduce?
This is the vendor the commission approved to do the update, and they're here to present where they are now. Mr. Jenke, do you have anything to add to that? This is not an actionable presentation.
This presentation is for information purposes only. We hired PMG Associates to help us with the update of the CRA plan. They did some preliminary field research, collected some data, and they would like to present this information here today in a brief 10-minute presentation. Phil Gonneau and Kathy Gonneau are with PMG Associates here today, and Phil will do the presentation.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our Lynn Haven CRA meeting, and thank you for bringing this information.
Thank you. My name is Phil Gonneau with the firm of PMG Associates. What we want to talk about today is just to introduce ourselves to you and to see where we're headed with this particular process, to make sure that you know what's going to happen and how it affects this operation. There are a number of criteria for establishing a CRA or expanding one. And that's all out of the Florida statutes, Chapter 163. And they set criteria that you must meet before you can be designated that way. And so what happens is when this report is done, it actually comes back to you all as the commission, because the city commission is the finder of fact. And the facts are that these conditions exist which allow for the creation or expansion of a CRA. So we will complete that particular work. And actually, as you go through this process, there's probably 3 documentations. One is the finding of necessity. The other is a request for expansion of time to Bay County. And the third would be the redevelopment plan. And just for the previous item, one of the items in the update of the plan is addressing how to restructure and work the business community along 390. So that will be part of that update. You know, the potential expansion is the old oil depot, and then there's a connection into the existing boundaries as you have now, the existing boundaries in the green. This would be the, if approved and move ahead, the new boundary of the CRA. You meet the conditions of slum and blight. For slum, there's 3 conditions that must be met. And under state law, you must meet either the slum or the blight. We'll talk about how this particular area addresses both of those. We have not completed our work, but we have completed some preliminary work. We can give you some of those findings at this point. So these are questions that if they occur, that would be something that would designate it as slum. The one that we think of fits here would be C, which is conditions, danger, life, and property, not necessarily by fire, but there is some residual petroleum on the site, and there is also danger because of flooding and evacuations. Under blight criteria, you must determine there are deteriorated structures. Structures are not just buildings, they can be drainage issues, roadways, others. But there are some of those. You also must meet 2 of the other 14 conditions. Here are the first 6 of them here, and here are the rest of them. So what we have to do is examine to see if any of these conditions are met in the area. So deteriorated structures, again, not just the buildings, but we'll look at other issues there, and facilities that need improvement. One of the things is here are some of the issues of the buildings. This is in the entranceway. That fits my description of deteriorated, even though there isn't one in state statutes. Also some of the buildings on the site. But even those outside the area, you see some issues with some of the deteriorated housing. There's some issues with the drainage and the roadways into that particular area, and they fit the deteriorated structures definition. One of the things that we look at is inadequate street layout. As you're all familiar, there's one way in and one way out to this property, and it goes through a residential street where people are living. That is an inadequate roadway system. We think that a new entranceway needs to be built if this development would move forward, and this is one of the things to address. And that gives you the idea of the road. Also, you can't tell with this picture, but the water is just on the other side of this tree line on the right. One of the others is the property values haven't kept up with the surrounding area. In the years between 2011 and 2015, the city of Lynn Haven's the total taxable value has increased 1.4%. Just as a comparison, the entirety of Bay County is 2.8%. But this particular area has decreased nearly 15%. And you think, well, why has that happened? Because it's all owned by the military. No, it's not. There are some private properties, and every single one of them have dropped in value as well in that time frame. There's roadway issues and deteriorated infrastructure. There's no utilities at all into that particular site. These are problems that we see as well. Unsafe conditions, the flooding, the evacuation routes. As you notice, the entire one is in the most important evacuation route and subject to flooding. The other is environmental issues on government-owned property. Well, it's owned by the Department of Defense. There has some petroleum spills over the years. And as the environmental assessment report said, there are still residuals of that petroleum and some of the other toxic materials there. It has been cleaned up, but it is not suitable, those soils, for residential use in its current condition. So we believe it meets this particular criteria of environmental issues. As you look at the site, you probably have seen this from the aerials. Those squared off areas, as I walked that particular site, are berms for containment areas. The tanks were in the middle, and those berms were for in case there were spills. And there were spills over time. As you see, this was also a holding tank, I think, for fresh water for fire. And here's what the berms look like today. As you see on the bottom, I don't know what's down in there. I don't know how deep it is, and I'm never going to get down there to find out. It's not something that it certainly needs to be cleaned up before anything can be done on this particular site. Our preliminary summary is that for the slum designation, the area meets 1 out of the 3 conditions. It meets the deteriorated structures criteria. And of the 14 criteria under blight, it meets 5. So under state law, this area qualifies to become a CRA or to be expanded into your existing CRA. So your next steps is we'll complete the finding of necessity to bring back for the commission for approval. There will be a public hearing at that time for that particular issue. That we need to make sure we notify the other taxing agencies that this is a consideration. And then if this particular body determines that is appropriate, you authorize us to move forward by doing the redevelopment plan, which will include both the existing CRA and the future area. You hold the public meetings so the public has the right to comment on every step of the way in that process. And then you have a final approval by the CRA board in that particular case. This is the process that you would go through. And this meets all the requirements out of the state law. If there's anything else that you need to know how we're going to approach this, I'm glad to answer your questions.
Are there questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
May I make one comment?
Sure.
I think we've had some citizens before as part of the CRA, and I might add, I think it's been successful in the 2 years I've been here, and I'm happy to see at least a modest increase in the values of the current CRA, but the blight or the slum, one has one of 4 criteria, the other one has 15, was that right? Or 12?
The slum has 3 criteria.
Okay, well, I guess my point is it's pretty easy to meet 1 or 2 of those to qualify, and several of our citizens have commented before as I don't live in a slum, which I can appreciate, but these are the criteria that have to be met to make a CRA, which again, that tax money, if it doesn't stay home here in Lynn Haven, is going to be collected anyway, and it would go to the county. So I just trying to help those feelings of those folks that live in the CRA when they get their home called a slum. So, I mean, it's nomenclature that may not necessarily be apt to your home, but it qualifies us to keep some of that money home and not send it to the county. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Because several of us here live in the CRA, including the mayor.
Yes, good.
Right. And it's
The other issue is that, and why the plan is important, is that the TIF dollars that are generated from this new expansion or anything else can only be spent within the boundaries of the CRA.
Right.
And only can be spent on items that are identified in your redevelopment plan. So that's why your plan has to make sure it addresses all the issues that you need throughout the area. And the 390 corridor is one of those issues.
Thank you. I do have a question in the back of the room. Yes, ma'am.
The question was, what 5 of the blight areas criteria does it meet? And I'm getting back to them. The first one is a defective street layout. It meets that particular criteria. Unsanitary and unsafe conditions, deterioration of improvements. The following, where's back here? The low increase in tax values. Those would be the particular ones that it would meet. And then the last one is the government-owned properties with environmental conditions.
And that's strictly, just for clarification, that's the Fuel Depot property, not our current CRA.
That is, this is
Right.
only with the,
Right.
the Fuel Depot property, yes. Yeah, they're finding a necessity is for the area to be added. It does not include the existing one.
Thank you so much for that information. And this particular item requires no action today. So moving on to number 8, which is the public commentary. If anyone has any comment or questions about anything to do with the CRA, this will be your time. Anyone? Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I'm moving to item number 9. This meeting of the CRA is adjourned, and we will begin the regular City Commission meeting at 6 p.m. Thank you.